Susan was just talking about spaciousness
Mm.
and perhaps some resistance to spaciousness. And so my question is, what is spaciousness? How do we experience spaciousness? What is it? Is it a tenderness? Is it a flow? Is it ease? Is it a lightness? Is it an openness? Is it a sense of floating, flying? Is there a groundedness in the spacious? What is it? You got anything, Susan? Then we'll go and see where Sarah and Dina go with this.
Well, for me, it's when I feel like everything is within me. So it's like my awareness becomes like everything. Like the car, I'm on a road, so I can hear car. It's within me, if you like, or within whatever that is, that awareness. So my awareness sort
Hmm.
of covers everything, and everything's within. So it's quite broad and it's quite impersonal, I guess. I don't know if that's what the parts don't like.
And
And
let
I don't
me.
know if it's like a mental construct and that it's me fooling myself and that's why they
Mhm.
don't like it, or whether it's too much of the impersonal and not enough of the sort of loving kindness or something.
In that, is there also in the space in this everything is within me, everything is within. Is Do you find a connect? Sometimes we use the word connectedness in IFS for this. Is there a connectedness that goes with it? Is there an intimacy that goes with this spaciousness? Everything is arising within.
Well, in one way, yes. As in it's all here like this, like the
Mhm.
sounds and everything. So in one way, yes, but there is an impersonal, what am I saying when I say impersonal? Well, it's just includes everything equally, I guess.
Yes. What about this is rich for me. This is very rich where Susan's pointing for us. It's like sometimes they call it like the emptiness, the nothingness
Yeah.
of this. And so, and we've all touched that. Maybe even the silence. That's like, who wants silence? Who wants stillness? Who wants that? The emptiness of it. But then I forget which of the spiritual texts talk about like emptiness is fullness and fullness is emptiness, something like that. It's like, and it's, and I'm wondering in that spaciousness, if we know it is emptiness, what flavor of fullness might be there too, or aliveness. That's where I was pointing to connectedness. And we all might have a different word for that, or maybe we don't find it. Maybe it is just scary. It's scary. Why would I want to go to spaciousness? It's nothingness. Why would I want to go into the great void for our parts that we might have parts that respond that way? And so that's before we go to Dina and Sarah with this, Susan, is there as you feel into this spaciousness, into this impersonalness, right? The impersonalness might be that flavor of some of the emptiness. What about is there a flip side to this coin that has a sense of fullness or connectedness or intimacy or ease or love or tenderness? You have a word like that that comes, and if you don't, that's cool too. It's
That's like a different state for me, actually. They don't, perhaps the two states don't connect yet. So I have another
Mhm.
state, which is what I was going to say, which is when I really feel like in a place where my parts enjoy it, is when I feel very present and grounded with a loving, open heart. And that feels different. And the two aren't, it's odd, isn't it? The two don't come together in my experience yet. And
Let me
that will
ask you
happen more
this.
in the right environment. If I'm in a kind of on a retreat or something and get very slow, it's kind of silent, it's grounded, it's love, beautiful place, beautiful state. And that's sort of, yeah, this other one's a little bit perhaps a bit disconnected. Maybe it is disconnected. Maybe you're right about that word,
Mm,
but it's disconnected. Whereas the other one is more connected.
what about the second one? Just for all of us, these two that Susan's describing, like how does that play in each of our systems? As she describes the second flavor, and I'm going to try to quote you here. When I feel present, grounded, and loving, open-hearted. Is it different as far as like containment? Because you use the word I there. Is there a sense on that one? It's more. There's this I that is having this experience. So it's different than
Mm.
the spaciousness that everything is arising in the spaciousness.
Yeah,
Is it like that?
yeah, yeah. And that's what I kind of do when my parts aren't happy with me and I'm out kind of in this other whatever that is. It's kind of I have to bring it back in into the body.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this is so I'm really curious. You've kind of set us up here with where how this plays for Sarah and Dina, and it might not translate at all. They might have a whole completely way of framing this the spaciousness, the openness, and sometimes the emptiness with the fullness, with what you were describing.
Mm.
Present, grounded, loving, open-hearted. It sounds so full. Before I do that, as we let me just do my little disclaimer thing real quickly that I'm a mediator, not a psychotherapist, as you guys know, and then I see this as friends exploring and not the IFS of psychotherapy. If everybody's good, being responsible for their own journeys, if I could get a thumbs up, please. Thank you. And then lastly, I always video these, I record these, but only my squares ever shared. However, the audio that you share today could be shared with this. And as always, we're interested in finding that fulfillment is here. So it's not necessary to go into any of the stories. You're welcome to, but it's not necessary. And as always, if you find like afterwards, it's like, oh darn, I can't believe I said that. That was horrible. I don't want that to be shared. To stay on, let me know. And I go delete, delete, delete for that. Everybody's good with that. If I can get a thumbs up, please. Awesome. So who wants to go? Sarah, Dina, who's got the most who's got something bubbling here with what Susan shared? How does it play in you?
Sarah, do you have anything? Otherwise, I can jump in, although I don't feel like I'm bubbling over, but but I have some reflections.
Please.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, what came up in me is boundaryless, like spaciousness I describe as it's really like being in a big room and not having a distinction between body and space, almost like it's just like yeah, it's difficult to describe in any other way. Space, being, space, and space. That's how I would describe it.
Can you relate to the fear that Susan was describing? She had parts that had some like, I don't like this so much. Does that show up in your system with this?
Used to. Um, the sense of maybe losing ground or losing myself somewhere, but it's a while ago. I I yeah. Um
And could you find the flip side of it? It's like as you described this boundarylessness, no distance between the body and space. Can you find like can you could you find a fullness in that, or were there words of connection or intimacy or love that you find within that in your system, Dina?
um I would say different flavor. That kind of rising spaciousness would be the love and the fullness. Fullness. I was really contemplating that word when I heard Susan speak about it. What is that to me? And I'm sure everybody experiences these things differently. I also want to really acknowledge that, like my experience of fear of something might be very different than yours, Susan or Sarah or Sid. But it's sort of like the sense that everything is really near and here. Right? Like everything and every substance, and it's sort of like it's the best way
Mm.
I can describe it. And I feel like words are failing me a little, but that's how it would be to me.
And do you have
And a
anyone,
content.
a
Hmm?
contentedness?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have anyone? Do you have any? Because we're playing like the parts game when we got all these parts, and Sarah can tell us about.
Yeah.
She's identified parts more than anybody. She's got all these parts. It's like, is there a part that still says no way. I don't want this. I don't like this. Do you have anyone in your system, or is it all? My friend Dina has been in kind of the non-dual side of this, the spiritual side of this for many years, and I don't know with all of that if there's still parts that say no, no.
Um, there is a part, and it's a little bit newer, I'd say. It definitely that just wants to live life. It doesn't want to hang out in spaciousness or like, enlightenment or anything. It's like I want to, and I need to be here, and I need to live life. And doesn't want to spend a lot of resources and time hanging out somewhere,
Yeah,
meditating or anything like that. I
right,
have that
right.
for sure. Yeah.
That, yeah. So can we all find a flavor of that? What Dina just said, a part that's just like, who cares about spaciousness? I want to go play with my kids. I want to go to the park. I want to, go have a pizza. Um, he, well, I'm curious where Sarah goes with this. Anything else on that you'd like to share? Then we'll go around and kind of dive in together. Anything else, Dina?
Any other parts? I mean, I really love spaciousness and any kind of meditative state. So, for the most part, there's a part that's kind of longing to bring that really together with my life and with my personality and to kind of like integrate more. It's more like that. It's more like I don't want to set time aside, meditate, and go somewhere. I want us to be here all the time.
And so for that, the parts that's like, oh, this spaciousness, this is really yummy. I'd like to integrate it. So when I'm with the kids, driving the car, going to work, it's always here. What does it find from the spaciousness? What's the gift of spaciousness to your system?
First word that comes to mind is soothing. It's very soothing. It's kind of like being in a womb, for the lack of a better word right now. It's sort of like, fundamentally all is well. That kind of a sense. Even if there are a lot of ripples in it, but fundamentally there's this, yeah,
It's
I'm good.
nice.
And
When
not
the space,
me, it's like everything is somewhat, good, ultimately.
nice. So for this is spaciousness, like your system will find everything is good. Fundamentally, all is well. Sometimes here we talk about this causeless okayness. It's just here. Everything is okay, independent of what's being experienced in
Mm.
life. There's just an okayness here, and that some of your system and some of your parts find that from the spaciousness that we've been talking about.
Hmm. Hmm.
How
Yeah,
nice.
that's really fair to say that. Yeah.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you. So before we go to Sarah, because this is kind of a deep dive that we're playing with here. Just may ask us all, how are you? And just like notice what's here. Notice like at the parts in the foreground. It's like, oh, this is exciting. This is interesting. I love what Dina just said. And maybe there's another part that's like, I'm a little uncomfortable, or gosh, I want to go eat something, or what am I doing later today? A planner part. We just notice the parts that arise with how are you? The parts that arise here. And then what are they arising in? What's the background? What's the stuff that's being us? What's the primary flavor of that in your system right now? Is it peace? Is it connectedness? Perhaps it's spaciousness, tenderness, connectedness, play, aliveness. And lastly, those parts, the foreground, anything that's there, the resistance, the wants, the preferences, the excitement, can all of that be welcomed here? Is there anything you have to do for it to be welcomed? Or does this beingness, the self, this presence, is it welcoming? Is the very nature of it welcoming? So what arises here is welcomed. All right, so you can shake all of that off. We can shake all of that off. And then we get to look at the square that has the name Sarah on it. And we get to be like, what's going on there? What does she do with like where Susan and Dina just spoke about? How does that play in her system? Like, don't you wonder, how does it play? How does her system make sense of this? Hey, Sarah, what's going on?
Hi. Um, well, spaciousness. Yeah, that made me feel relaxed. Like, oh, there's a sense of ease. Like nothing is going on, just spaciousness, and it's a good feeling. I have parts that didn't want to be in spaciousness. The one that wants to have coffee and eat. There's the one that wants to play with a cat. There's one that wants music, and like, oh, there's not much going on in spaciousness. So there was these wants coming up from these parts. But spaciousness is just relaxing.
Wow. And what about when Dina spoke about like parts that wanted both? That they wanted this, they didn't want to have to go meditate for the spaciousness and step away. They're wanting spaciousness when we're in life, when we're doing these things, when we're eating when we're having the coffee, when we're playing with the cat. What does your system do with that?
Having spaciousness while being, it's kind of tricky. Like it feels like, oh, it can both be at the same time. If you're doing something, can you have spaciousness in that moment? It's interesting. It's like losing time when playing with my cat, and then wow, an hour passed. When we've done nothing, we're just playing. Um, so it's that sense of spaciousness, like, oh, losing track of time and space and just being.
And in that, when you described a sense of relaxation and ease in the spaciousness, in Dina's system, there was a sense of, she described a fundamentally all is well, the sense of okayness that comes in the spaciousness. Is there that as you're playing with the cat and an hour passes in with is does the spaciousness include a sense of okayness in your system, Sarah, or is there kind of different words?
Okayness. Yeah, I can't find a better word. It feels like, yeah, it's okay. Everything's okay. Sense of okayness.
Yeah.
The first thing that came to me was relaxing. Like it's a peaceful, relaxing feeling.
And so what about what's the thing that's like we all have things we procrastinate on, and like something, Sarah, that you might like the least thing you'd want to do, like, oh, go fix something or whatever that is, or it's like, is it possible that something that we resist or we really don't like to do, and so like when you're doing it, you notice, wow, I'm really not enjoying this. This is stressful. I don't enjoy it. Is it possible that that could happen, just like petting the cat, and that there could be spaciousness there at the same time, that there could be an okayness, a feeling of okayness, even when it's like, oh, darn, I really don't like this. What about that? And this is, we're playing with parts and self being here simultaneously, is what we're playing with.
There's the part that doesn't want to do the dishes. But then when I'm doing the dishes, like sometimes there's spaciousness and I just finish the dishes and I'm like, wow, when did I finish that? It just happened, just cleaning the house, doing things that I don't really want to do. But
Yeah.
and then just time passes and the task is over, it's done. And there's that sense of like, oh, it's done. I did it.
Mm.
And there's that
She
sense of, oh, there's ease and just flow.
cool. Yeah. Ease and flow. Anything else, Sarah?
I would have to be intentional about it. Like if I'm not conscious that, oh, I want to be just, I want to enjoy this task that I don't really like, then I'll be dreading it the whole time. But I have to consciously step away from that part, let it step away and just be and just do that task.
So how does that happen, right? Let's say we're washing the dishes, and as you're washing the dishes, you're kind of blended with the part thumbs, like, God, I hate this. Why do I have to do this? This isn't fair. I don't want to do this. So you got all that, but then self is here in the background, that it's just being obscured. We know that self is here. We can just use that word okayness. How do you find the simultaneity of the part that just hates this, it doesn't like doing the dishes, and this okayness, you called it, this flow, this ease? How does that happen in your system?
If I'm blended with that part, I have to consciously unblend and just be and just do it. And if not, then I'll be blended with that part.
And so how does that happen? Sometimes we talk about zooming out or becoming aware of the part. How does what's the most effortless way that the unblending happens in your system, that the presence of the self, this okayness, comes into the picture? What's the most effortless way that happens?
When I notice that I'm upset about something, like, oh, this is bothering me, I'm upset, I don't want to do this task, then I realize, oh, there's a part here that's not okay with this, and I'm blended with that part. And then there's that sense of, oh, I can just be. I don't have to be that part. I don't have to be that part.
So that might be, in classic IFS, we have these C's that describe this self, and one is clarity. And as we hear, can you hear that? Like in Sarah's, it's just like, well, there's clarity here. There's just clarity. Some people call it knowing, or just even awareness that I don't have to be this part. And with that clarity, that knowing, then it opens up. Sweet. It's for each of us. How does that happen when we find ourselves doing the dishes and having a part that's, I really hate this, or whatever your version of it is? Is it like Sarah's, where there's a clarity that comes, a clear knowing, and then it just kind of opens back up and self and okayness comes? Or how does that work? And so here we are, it's the four of us, and locked the door, so it's really the four of us here, it's just us. And we get to just see where we want to go today. This was all from Susan, like, because I was asking Susan before you guys showed up, like, Susan, like, what brings you here? What would be like the richest, most wonderful thing for us to explore today? And she started talking about, well, I really enjoyed is that okay, Susan, if I just kind of share? She said, like, I really enjoyed the energy of the group. I like exploring the sense of being okay with whatever comes. She was with me a couple days ago. We were doing this with Sarah, and it was like, what okayness with whatever comes. And then she started talking about the parts that don't trust self, energy. And that's kind of what led us into this. And she was describing that in her system, guides come up in self-like parts, and then the sense of parts not kind of knowing or trusting self. And that's what took us here. And so what about you guys? Like, as we get to co-create today and dive in, like, what brings you here today? What's interesting? And then we get to, like, the four of us dance with all of that. Can I go back to you, Dina, and see, because I haven't seen you forever. And and Dina's very busy, so it's a treat when she comes. What's the richest edge for you right now that would be fun to include in today?
Oh, I really had this vision of doing one of those guided, almost like a guided meditation, IFS meditation that you used to do. And I haven't been here for so long that I don't know if that's still part of your curriculum or not. It is. Yeah. I was just picturing, this guided meditation and really doing a deep dive there.
And with
Yes.
that, with the guided exploration, as we would all as we'll do it, we'll all dive in together. For Dina's system, what's most interesting about it? Is it the opportunity to fall into this spaciousness, and then into this fundamental okayness, or what's interesting for you with that?
Yeah. So the first part for sure, but then also to have parts come up that might be a little bit agitated or that might have, some dissonance. So having both of that come together.
Wonderful, because that's it's very much what Susan was sharing as well. It's like the idea of it's a space that it's okay with whatever comes up. Like, oh, that whatever parts come up, it's like, well, what's going to come up when we go in? The ones that are dissonant and agitated, and maybe there's one like Sarah is like, hell, like this, I don't want to do this. It's like, what parts are going to come up? Great. Anything else, Dina?
Um, that's mostly it. That's sort of like the core piece to me.
Awesome. Easy. Awesome.
Just-
Thank you. Sarah, what about you? We haven't asked you this in a while. Like, what's the edge in your opening? What's the most interesting, or what's the challenge? What's going on that would be rich for us for today?
Um, when you mentioned how I noticed like, oh, there's a part here, and yeah, sometimes when I'm really blended with a really like difficult part, and I get that feeling like I'm out of my body, looking at myself, and I'm not being myself. I'm just being someone else, and I realize, oh, this isn't me. What's going on? And I feel like, oh, I have no control over this, whatever this is that's happening. And usually it's like having like a big tantrum or something, and I realize, oh, I must be blended with like a 4-year-old or something. Um and then after like the thing is over, then I'm myself again, and I realize, oh wow, I really lost it for a few minutes. um and that wasn't me, that was something else. And I realized, oh, that's a part, that's like a really young part that was having a tantrum, or um was having, I don't know, like maybe crying, like having a crying episode or something. So yeah, it's that too. That feeling of out of body experience, not being myself, being out of my body, looking in, just looking at myself and realizing, oh, what's going on here? Or I don't have control over my body. So yeah, there's that feeling. And it's sometimes there's a part that feels concerned about that, like, oh, I can't be out of control like that. I have to get a grip. um I feel like, oh, that's the manager part. And when it feels like, oh, we're really blended with that young part, and there's nothing I can do about it. And then it feels like, oh, it failed the system somehow because it's not in control. And you just have to wait it out, wait for that young part to be done with whatever it's going through. And then the manager part can manage the system again. And I feel like, oh, like myself, it's just comforting that manager part, like, hey, it's okay, you don't have to freak out, you're doing a great job, and it's okay if you slip up sometimes. I'm here for you, I'm here for all of you. And that comforts that part a little bit. And even the young parts, that we're having like an episode of something, like they feel like, oh, you're welcome here, it's okay for you to be here. um while the manager part doesn't feel that it's okay for that part to be here. So then I realized, oh, the one that's opposing is the manager part, and but myself is okay with that part.
Wow. Sarah and I love this movie called Inside Out 2. Susan and Dina, have you guys, either of you have y'all seen it? You've seen it. Dina, Susan has not.
Oh, it's a great movie.
It makes me think of, like, I think of the scene, it's all about, like, there are 9 parts. In this one, there are 9 inner parts to the system. They're like in the control room, like in the head over control panel. And there's this one called this anxiety part that just kind of has what Sarah's described. It like goes to an extreme of can't get, this is too much, and she just does that and then blends. And I love this because then there's a manager in the system that they call, for me, Joy is kind of the manager and trying to make everything okay. And she like wasn't so okay with anxiety, right? It was like, but what's missing from the movie is what Sarah speaks of, the sense of self, the self that even in the midst of, we have a part that's blending and a tantrum. We all know this at different degrees of tantrums that happen where we blend and identify with the part. Anger often happens with that, frustration, anxiety. And then we have another part, maybe it's like this adult manager part. That is not okay. That is out of control. And then I love where Sarah took us with the dance between that and then self, this beingness. It just is okay with what is. It loves what is. And she was describing how the young parts, they get to be like, it's okay. And the manager, it's like comforting the manager. It's okay that this is happening. It's okay. Can we all relate to that in our system? Like a part that we blend with some, and when we do that, we have a part that kind of a manager part, the part that responds, saying it's not okay to do that. And then there's also this beingness that is okay, that welcomes it. Maybe we'll include this in where we go with the Dina's like our like little guided exploration. I just love that, Sarah. Yeah, that's my thought, to include it, and we'll do this in a few minutes. But anything else, Sarah, with this?
Yes, what Susan mentioned, the guide or the part or guide that doesn't trust self. I remember like I had times when I felt that way. There were parts, maybe the manager part didn't really trust self. And like after like getting to know it over time, I realized, oh, it doesn't really trust me because it thinks that maybe I'm 4 or 5. But it started to trust me more once I updated it. Like, hey, I'm not 4 anymore, and I'm okay, and I can handle this. I can handle things, and just started to build a relationship with it. And then that part was okay, and it started to trust self more. And yeah, so I just wanted to share that for Susan. Like, hey, maybe building trust with self.
What have you found, Sarah? Like, Dick Schwartz talks about working with people and their parts, and he's like, I'm so surprised that most of the parts we meet are single digit, right? They're young parts of us, and it's like, what do you mean? Like, Sid, I'm 57, and I've got all these aspects of me that are like 9, 6, 4. What do you find in your Sarah's done a lot of exploration of parts? What do you find as far as the age of your part, Sarah?
Oh, there's a bunch of inner children, like, and they're always amazed, like, oh wow, you're not a kid anymore. No, I'm not. And yeah, I had a deep exploration, like maybe a week ago or something, and I found a really traumatized part that thought I was 5, and once that part knew that, oh, I'm not 5 anymore, it felt good, and it trusted me. I could hear it from my system, like, oh, we trust you. You can handle this. Because there was a lot of protector parts that won't let me go there. It won't let me go to the traumatized part. So once they trusted me, I could reach that part, and I could do some some work with it. And it was apart from kindergarten. Like I forgot about these events. Like, oh wow, I completely forgot this happened.
So let me ask you this, Sarah. Can you see the innocence of these young parts? This kindergarten part, it's like it's not safe. It's not safe to feel this or do this. It's like that makes sense, right? And it's like the innocence of it and the innocence of the protectors. They're like, there's no way we're going there. We don't have the capacity. It's not safe to do this. Like to see the innocence of it, like because we might have, as we hear Sarah describe this, just notice if you have parts that are like that might make them wrong, that might make these young parts wrong, that don't trust self. Like they should trust self. Self is here, and self is here. But if we can hear the innocence of these parts that say no, especially like what Sarah's describing, they're young, it's not safe. If we can see the innocence of that and the sense of there's no need to change them, we just like welcome and appreciate and love them just the way they are. And then as they experience this love, they're like, wait a minute, we're not all five anymore. There's something here that isn't five. There's something here that I can trust. How am I doing, Sarah? That's what I'm kind of, I see that seems to happen in systems. How does it go in your system? And then we'll kind of go back to Susan with this and we'll go in a little dive.
Yes, yes, definitely. They started to loosen and to trust once they knew, oh, I'm an adult now and I can handle things. And it's not just my energy, it was the practitioner's energy as well. Like, oh, if my self energy, if you don't trust my self energy, you can trust the other self energy that's present here for you now, for the system. And that's what I love about being in groups. Like, oh, when there's a lot of self energy, it's like it makes the system feel so much safer and just calmer, and like just trusting that, oh, we can trust self and we can trust other self energy.
Yes, nice, beautiful. And yeah, even the four of us here, that you're not alone, that there's we're all being held in this together. We're all holding each other in this. And then just last thing to notice, even in the midst of it, as we hear the gentleness of Sarah's system and the love that's there, I'm still betting that there is some kind of like spiritual achiever part that's like, okay, come on, let's get on with this. Let's let these parts need to heal. They need to update. We don't want to like be a 5-year-old walking around in the world. And just to notice any kind of like achiever pusher part, and you see the innocence of that too, but just to notice that we don't want to blend with that part, right? Because even though it seems like that part will be, no, this is what we need to end it, we need to do this, we need to heal the system, we need to move forward. Is share this if you can feel this when someone's telling you need to change, that something's wrong. Notice what happens if a resistance comes, and it's like a polarity happens, and it like this is what slows down the healing in our system. It's ironic, isn't it? It's like when we have this pusher, because it's like the equal opposite reaction. It's like driving with the parking brake on. Okay, that was so beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. And let's just Susan, how's all this going for you? How you doing there?
Yeah, so I was talking about the spaciousness and then the other form of sort of self energy, I feel. And it feels as we're talking that that spaciousness is getting filled with more aliveness, more groundedness, and that feels a lot better in my system. So I don't know what's happening here. But as Dina and Sarah checking in, I'm getting more present. So it's more alive than it was when it was very spacious. And my system, and I haven't checked in with particular parts, but it just feels like that would be more, that's a better quality self for my parts, actually. It feels really nice. And when you were talking about achieving, the spiritual achiever, that groundedness that comes in, or an aliveness that's not interested in achievement, actually, it's here, and it's just content, and it's here. It's very nice. So that's
What
what,
about,
as people have been
yeah,
talking, that's kind of it's brought me more of that more full self energy, I guess. So that's been really helpful.
beautiful. A couple of your words, you said a better quality self for my parts, better quality self for my parts. This is a big deal. It's like we might have an idea that, hey, the spaciousness or the ease or flow is that's what self is. But really, I'm more interested in just what you said, Susan, for better quality of self for my parts. Like, what do your parts want?
Mm.
What do your parts want? What's home for all of us, for our parts? What is the welcoming, the love? What is it that they want? What is it they need to feel
Mm.
this fulfillment, this okayness? And like, Susan's experiencing the flavor of self kind of change a little in her system. It's like, wow, my parts like that better. What is it that your parts are longing for? Hmm. Dina, anything here for you before then we'll go into our dive together.
The question, what are your parts longing for? It brings up a version of what was there before, somewhat the connection to spaciousness and to self, and to this like okay place from the parts that don't quite feel that way, that have a bit of an agitation and a bit of like a restlessness. They kind of want to go somewhere but they don't quite know where. So there's somewhat a longing for a more unified experience in my system, in my overall system. It might be a particular part, but I experience it right now as an overall longing.
Beautiful. How about that? Dina's describing as a longing for a more unified experience, more spaciousness, more self, this longing. Let's start there with our dive together. Just start right there. What want can you feel in your system? What longing can you feel? What do you want? What do you want? Can you notice particular wants, the parts that show up that have wants? The ones in Dina, I want more unified experience, I want more spaciousness. What do you want? The one Susan's speaking of, like, this version of self, it's more what we want, it serves us better. There's more presence here. Can you find the longing? Can you feel the longing of your part? What are you wanting? What are you wanting? Really? If you can be aware of the parts that have the longing. For some of us, there's a sense of hearing them, like hearing voices. Like we can hear it in our head. We can hear the thoughts of what we want. I want peace. I want okayness. I want ease. I want love. I want flow. I want connectedness. I want to be connected to this. I want more connectedness, as Dina points out. What are the words, if they're words? I want relief. I want harmony. Connectedness. I want acceptance. Acceptance. I want welcoming. What are the sounds? What are the words? Some of us, it might not be words at all. It might just be all somatic, almost sensations. Like we can feel the parts, we can feel the want. What's the longing for in the sensations? For relief, peace, okayness. What's being longed for? And then can we be aware of these parts of this longing? And this is where we almost like a foreground and background, like the parts that are longing, the want is in the foreground. See if you can see them. See if you can see the parts or be aware of them. Kind of like we all have different images for this. For some, it's a hot tub, they're soaking in. Or some, it's a galaxy, a big space, and they're like a constellation of planets. Or for some, it's like a theater, it's a stage, and the parts are on stage like actors inside of us. But whatever your image is, see if you can be aware of them, like the foreground. And then there's this background that they're arising in. And what is that? What's the predominant feel of that? What's the loudest quality of the self that's here? Is it peace? Is it presence? Like Susan described this word presence. Is it presence? Or Sarah, is this ease, this flow, okayness? What's your word for the beingness? And then notice if you can find the two, the foreground parts with the longing and the background of self. And then can you feel the longing from self, from the background, from if we can feel the self, this presence. Maybe we can sink into that some, this background, and from there, can you feel the longing of the parts in the foreground for what they're wanting? More connection, more presence, more flow, more ease, relief. You can feel what they're longing for. Like sometimes children saying, "I want this." You can just feel it. You can know it. You can just know it. As you feel that longing, notice if it can evoke from you, from background, from self, what is being longed for. If it's connection, is there connectedness here? Is there an intimacy, an inclusion that's just here, that you are? If it's relief that is being longed for, what's most like relief that's here now? They're longing for ease or flow. What's most like ease or flow that's here? If they're longing for more presence, more aliveness, are they? Are they longing for more presence? Do you have parts that are longing for more presence, more aliveness? What's like presence or aliveness that's here now? And can your parts feel that? Can they feel the presence, the aliveness that's here? Can they feel the connectedness that's here? If they're longing for care, tenderness, or love, see if you can feel that. Do you have parts that are longing for care, tenderness, love, or acceptance? If you can feel that longing, What's most like that which is here now? What's most like care, tenderness, love, acceptance that's here? And lastly, can your parts feel that? Can they receive it? Can they feel that whatever's most like care, tenderness, love, acceptance that's here now? They feel it. What's that like for your parts? Perhaps receive some of what they're longing for. They're not receiving it from anything you're having to do. They're receiving it from the self that is intrinsically here. What's that like for your parts? What's that like? And perhaps is there some updating that's happening as well? As they're finding some of what they're longing for is here in you as you. What's that like inside of you? And then Sarah earlier pointed out a part, like a manager part, that might be like, oh, it'd be better if something was different than what is. Like, do we all have, as we're aware of our parts here, do we all have a part that might be like, God, my part they should welcome this more. They should be more open to self, to beingness, to feeling it, to letting it in. Or maybe you have a part, maybe this part's saying, they shouldn't be so needy. Why are my parts so needy? Why are they longing? They shouldn't be this way. Is it okay that that manager part is here and saying these things? And we see the innocence of this manager part that's trying to help. And what is it that the manager part is really wanting? Any voice inside of you that's saying it'd be better if something was different, that the parts were different, that something was different. What is being longed for from that part? What is that part longing for? Is it longing for this okayness? Is it longing for peace? Is it longing for harmony? Is it longing for connection? Is it longing for relief? What's your manager part longing for? And what's most like that which is here now? Peace, connection, harmony, relief, okayness. Can the manager part feel that as well? And it feel that it's here now, what is being longed for. And then Sarah also mentioned, since even when that's happening, even when there's a manager part saying, I want it to be different, that self, this background, this beingness is just okay with what is. Can you find that? What's most like this that Dina was calling this fundamentally all is well? What's the flavor of that within you as you're aware of your parts right now? As there's awareness of the parts, what's most like this causeless okayness, this fundamentally all is well inside you right now? And can it coexist? Can it be here simultaneously? Can there be simultaneous awareness of this okayness that's here, this welcoming, along with the parts that have a longing? And both of those be here. Sarah washing the dishes, the part that's not wanting to wash the dishes, and this that's just is okay. Ease, flow now. and they will all be here. And lastly, this that Susan highlighted for us, we're almost done. Parts that don't trust. They're either skeptical or they're not trusting all of this. They're not trusting the self, these words that we're describing as qualities of self. Can you find a part or parts that have like a no, a resistance, a concern? It's like, I can't trust this. I'm not ready to trust this. Can those parts be kind of, you find there's just a welcoming and celebration? Can they be in this okayness that they can be welcomed just the way they are? The parts that say no, aspects of you that say no, can those be welcomed? And I'm going to just, for our finale, I'm going to push it a little further. What if those parts never change? What if they stay the way they are forever? Can you touch in the self, this that just welcomes and loves what is? Can you find an okayness towards those parts, just the way they are? That self doesn't have a preference for them to change. If you can taste that. Though you probably have parts, like as I do, that are like, no, we want it to update. We want it to be more okay, to know that everything's okay. Parts that want to push, heal, change. But then from self, and you find that self just welcomes those parts just the way they are, the ones that say no, and just welcomes them to never change, just loves them just the way they are. So as we get ready to come back together, is it possible that this self might even be a little in the foreground, that maybe, I think Susan described this, that sometimes the self is the foreground? Is it possible that we have a glimpse of that, and that the parts, perhaps for some of us, are more in the background, and we hear them in the background, and we are in the self. The self is here as we come back together. You gently open your eyes whenever you're ready. Is it possible that it's just namaste, that we're meeting in self, we're meeting in this beingness together, we're meeting in this okayness that just includes all of our lovely, precious parts? And as we meet in this, as we are here, in this beingness and the self, we'd like to gently let anything shake off. That was a lot as we meet here together. Nothing needs to be done. There's no place that we're going. We're just meeting together in celebration of you, your parts, the beingness. Everything is welcomed. That was a lot. Wow, that was so much. You know, I mean, there's a little tiredness there, a little bit of exhaustion. Mm. Who would like to share first? How are you?
Well, I can go first. I could have continued this for a long time. I felt like my system started settling, and what I had mentioned before, that I wanted to be more unified, that actually started happening. But it was like still in progress. And we came out. And it's also not a complaint, it's just where I'm at.
What's
Yeah.
that like, Dina? What's that like? The unifiedness, this that this that you were enjoying. You're like, "Well, why do we come out? I just want to stay in that. I just want to go deeper into that. What's that like?
Um, it's again somewhat wanting something to be a little bit different than it is. And when you were mentioning that, that really hit home. And there was this exploration of like, what if nothing ever changes? What if this is it? What if this is like fully okay as is? It's just nothing needs to be different. And and that really brought about sort of like this internal shift of like, yeah, I, I don't need to go, well, this needs to change and that needs to change. And I feel so uprooted, it's like, what if it never changes? That was the exploration in my system. But also like tangibly, my energy really shifted. It's like really warm in my abdomen and kind of, yeah, I feel almost like much more held. No,
What are you being held by?
I was almost gonna finish the sentence. No, you're asking. Yeah, really again, nothing personal. It just feels like being held by a sense of an energy around me.
What's this in it? Is it love? Is it welcoming? Is it intimacy? Is it more neutrality or equanimity? What's the peace? What's the flavor?
Yeah. You mentioned a lot of words where I was gonna go, yes, yes, yes. More love, more equanimity, um, more restfulness, as in more contentness as well. Like I'm here in my seat and this is this is good right now. Nothing needs to be different right now. There's much more of that sense. Um, I feel slowed down a bit. Um, and physically more relaxed. So I noticed that too.
Mhm. Words that you described, are these what your parts are longing for? Did it give your parts what they're wanting, which is the bottom line, right? In a way, this is all for your parts. We're throwing a party for your parts. We're welcoming, we're caring for our parts here, for us. Were those words what they're looking for? The sense of held, love, equanimity, restfulness, contentment. Nothing needs to be different. Slowed down, relaxed.
Mm.
Is that what they want? Or did parts, you have something like, yeah, that's great, but what I really want is this.
That is still there somewhat, but I encountered this very overactive manager in my system that feels like, oh, I can't manage well enough and fast enough, and so much needs to happen and be changed. And that manager in particular, uh, just calmed right down. Not that it's completely inactive and that part still feels like it needs to fulfill its role, but it's just so much more relaxed about its
Mm.
right now and doesn't need to hold everything at once. So that's really what, and that one is also really benefiting from that space of um that I just described, the love, and it's calmer and it's more peaceful and it feels more effective. Potentially it feels like it can be more effective that way rather than being so scattered and trying to address
Mm.
it at once.
Right. For all of us, because as Dina let us step into her world and get a sense of this being held and what that was like and what the flavor of this that was holding and how it was experienced. I'd like to hear that thing from Sarah or Susan as we just the exquisiteness of Dina's sharing and her system. Anything bubble up before we kind of transition?
It felt similar in a way to the experience I had. It was a real settling into that sort of presence, aliveness, and all my parts. I sort of went back to the ones that were around on Sunday, and all the kids drinking their milk at sort of nursery school were all really, well, it met their needs. Just that alive presence. It just felt like safety and, I guess, love, but not in a sentimental way, just as in permission to be.
Beautiful.
And even the teacher who came up, who was trying to keep them in order because they were really naughty, could see that they weren't going to be naughty. And in that, it's really interesting, actually. I got this feeling about, is this ADHD, where, or other presentations of, where there's a lack of holding presence, because these kids were so settled, they weren't going to be naughty. So they got their needs. The teacher relaxed. The inner critic that came up, the critic that come up and said, I'm a loser last time, just everything's okay in that presence. And the only part that came up was a sort of a doer part that said, how are we going to get anything? It was getting very kind of relaxed and a bit sleepy, actually, at one point. Everyone was kind of ready for an afternoon snooze. It's afternoon here. And everyone was getting ready for an afternoon snooze, and then a part came up and said, we're not going to get anything done around here. So the question came up again, which is kind of what I think Sarah was talking about earlier, which is, can self be present in this way and things get done? I think things are done in a slightly different way, more mindful way, is my sort of sense of that. But that's another matter. That's just my mind's trying to understand it and put it all together. But it was a very nice experience, and it was, and the parts, that's what they wanted. They wanted that. It kind of brought in connection and intimacy with it's almost like, to explain it, it's almost like there's an electrical pulse that just touches everything. So it's all connected, and it's sort of holding, almost like it's comforting and holding of all the parts. It's kind of like it's almost like the kids can't get into trouble because this is holding them. So they've got room to do what they need to do, but they're held. So they can be, but they're safe at the same time. It's really, yeah.
So nice.
It was nice.
Oh my.
Thank you.
Curious. Yes, thank you, Susan. Yeah, there's so much there that you just shared, but I had a sense to jump back with Dina, something that you shared about the concern of the doer. Because Dina, you were talking about in your system, there was a sense of, wow, there could be a more effectiveness from this place. You used the word, I think it was effective. Where does your system go with that, Dina?
So that it can focus more on what's actually really immediately important, and not think about and bring in things that are far away, unpredictable, and waste its thinking power and time on hanging out there. So it's more like practical in here, and yeah, that's how it feels.
Yeah.
And it's also potentially creating a lot of negative feelings that way, my manager. So there's not this exhaustion of the system to deal with, like, those negative feelings that arise from the scatteredness and trying to take it on all at once.
Thank you. And let's dive back into something Susan shared about. Describe Susan in the sense that there was a connectedness and intimacy, and you described like an electrical pulse, like everything was connected this way. And so it was like the parts could do their thing, but they were still held in this. So there was a safety. And how do we find that? What's the flavor? When do we get the sense of, because sometimes this work's called internal family systems, and it's like the sense of that there is a system here, it's a family. But this often takes a long time for systems to get a sense of that, of being the parts are connected. We're part of a family because most of our parts feel like they're out there and they need to take care of things. And the intimacy that Susan was describing in her system, electrical impulse, the sense of holding, being held, like what Dina was describing, the sense of being held. What's it like for your parts, for all of us? What's it like for our parts when they get to be there? For Dina's parts, when there's a sense of this being held, and this love, this equanimity, this contentment, this relaxation. For Susan's part, she in our last group, she described like the kids sitting around. I forget, was having milk, but they were like, but they might be naughty, they might do this, they might do that. But what's it like when there's something they're just held and it's like, okay, they can be however they want to express. Everything's welcomed here. Your parts can be themselves. They can express, they can dance, they can play, they can whine, they can tantrum. Everything's okay. Everything's accepted in okayness here. What's that like for your system, Susan?
Well, it wasn't so much accepting that they can tantrum. It was that they're not going to tantrum in that presence. There's just no need. They're just soothed. They're soothed and settled. They might explore and adventure, and that's all okay. But they're not going to it didn't feel like they just weren't going to be naughty. They weren't going to do, they were just, it just soothed their systems. It was just very soothing. So yes, they could explore and create, and, they might make a mistake if you like, or kind of whatever, but it wasn't the same energy at all. They were very soothed by this energy. Very soothed. It makes me sad because, wow, that's what kids need. That's what sort of companies is what kids need, this presence. Holding presence.
But it was just here. This presence, this connectedness was here. Did you have to do anything for it to be here for them? Was there like a doer part? It's okay, I'm gonna get this did you have to do anything, or was it just here from this beingness? What do you
I
find?
had to come to this meeting, Sid. It wasn't there before the meeting, so in a way there was something. It's there, but it has to be evoked, or I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? And as you were talking earlier before this exercise, I was thinking I'm most like this when I do more spiritual practice, and actually more embodied spiritual practice rather than so there's different, obviously different methods of meditation and so on. And when I get more like this, it's more of usually a sort of body focus sort of meditation will bring more of this, and perhaps that's, yeah. So sometimes when I've been on retreat or where I've done a lot of meditation, so actually there is something, this is odd, isn't it? There is something for me that seems to need to be done to bring this forth.
So great. Like you've noticed the different things, somatic of meditation, being in certain environments, being on a retreat, it helps to somehow, it evokes what we're talking about here, what you're experiencing, what your parts are really longing for, this soothing, this connectedness. And then we heard this from the very beginning with Dina, that it's like her parts don't want to have to go do that. They don't want to have to step away with that. They want it integrated. Like and we played with this with Sarah, the washing dishes. And perhaps there's the opportunity in this exploration that we're having today. It's like we call it updating in IFS, like the system, wait a minute, it is here. It's here. And it becomes more, maybe just gradually. It all happens organically, right? We know that we don't want some spiritual achiever come in and try to, oh, I'll find it, I'll do it, because it just backfires. We just like let it all organically happen, and maybe some of that's happening today. One more question before we go to Sarah, because we've just got like 15 minutes left. This that Susan's describing, that her inner children really want to be held this way, met this soothed this way, the sense of this okayness, this safety. Do you want this? Do you want this? Is it just our inner children that want this? Do you want this? Do we want this? To have that. And that met your inner parts, your inner children, is it possible that that's here now and that that's what we are in? Is it possible that we, Sid, Dina, Sarah, Susan, are being held in that? And just like your parts, like they were being held, that we're being held. Okay, shake that off. We got Sarah in a minute and see what's happening in Sarah land. If you could join me, it's like, what do we think's there? What's happening in Sarah land with all of this? Where's she gonna take us? All right, Sarah, what's going on?
Yes, I had a similar experience. I just felt all my inner children, they just wanted to be held. And I just spent some time with them. Like there was that sense of like, oh, come here, come here, you, and like just holding them. And there was a lot of voices, like a lot of wants and a lot of, like and I just had to be there and just comfort each one of them. And it felt like, oh, okay, who's next? and it's like it goes on and on. And I needed to lay down, actually. Like I felt like, oh, I need to lay down through the dive and just feel connected to my whole being. And there was a sleepy part that was coming up, and I felt like, oh, I'm gonna sleep in a minute now. So that was yeah, that was tempting. I was really tempted to sleep, because I was like so relaxed, and then just feeling okay and just peaceful.
Is it okay, Sarah, that you had all these parts that had wants? They were like, I don't know if they were like waiting in line or if they were like all here at the same time with their wants. Was it okay? And did you have like from earlier a manager part that might be, oh, maybe something's not okay, or maybe better if it was different? How did that play in your system with all the wants that were happening?
My manager part, well, it felt comforted that self is here, that it doesn't have to do anything. It can just hand things over to me and just relax and not do anything. So it was okay. And all of them were okay. And I realized that, oh, the little ones, when they know that the manager part is in charge, they kind of shrink back, and they don't really reach. But when self energy is there, they reach out, all of them at once. They're like, me. And it's like they trust self, that self is not going to judge them, or self is going to be okay with them, with all of them, with all of their needs. But the manager part is not okay with all of it. Like it would not be as welcoming. And then I have a mothering part that comes up, and it likes to try to mother and just be there and just like a comforter mother part. But even that part doesn't have to step in, because there's just self with these little ones. And
Let me ask everybody this question. Just where Sarah's taking us in her system, it's such an exquisite contrast with the manager that's doing its very best to help, right? We hear all these parts that are wanting, they're needing, they're wanting something. Of course, the manager part's going to go in there and kind of care and want to help, right? And just notice what's the flavor of the manager part in you that goes and wants to help when it hears the parts that are wanting the vulnerability. You can find that. And can you see the innocence of it, the beauty of the part that's the manager part that's doing its very best? It's coming in, it's going to help. And it's like, I can help here. I want to help. And we have manager parts. I mean, my friend, both of you, Susan and Dina, they're like trained in therapeutic modalities. Like I know how to help. And Sarah's got, we've heard from Sarah, all these different modalities. It's like we all have these modalities. And so, of course, hey, I can help the manager, the part that wants to come help with those. And can we see the innocence of that? And then if we at the same time can make the discernment that Sarah pointed out, like how your parts, if we can feel out how the parts respond, like she said, some of her parts, they would like shrink back some when the manager would come. In contrast to when it was self that was meeting them. It was like me, me, me. They were all reaching out at the same time. Me, me, me. This is it's like it's so easy to follow it in Sarah's system because she was so open and beautifully transparent with this. But this discernment's a big deal. It's a big deal in our systems. This little discernment that she's just by the way, this is what was happening. It's like such a if we can find that in our system and if we can feel the difference between how our vulnerability responds to the manager that they like superheroes in our system, right? They're doing their very best and they've developed all these skills and modalities, and then there's the self that meets and they can work together. There's a way they can work together, but it's just like to be able to see that. Back to you, Sarah.
Yes, they definitely work together. Like when they come up, they try to work together and handle like any part that's arising at that moment. But when there's just self there, they don't have to do anything. They can just relax and just kick back and relax. And it's like, oh, we don't have to lift a finger. And that feels good. That feels peaceful. Like there's no agenda for that manager to do anything.
Got like 7 minutes left. And any final words with this share, Sarah, before we kind of open it up to Susan and Dina, just to see what's bubbling as we kind of start moving towards closure together.
Oh, thank you so much. I really love the dives. They bring up a lot in my system.
You got the dives were all the dive was evoked from Susan, Sarah, and Dina's system. It was evoked from trying to address and celebrate and meet and welcome. How are you guys? Susan, how are you doing today? How's the system doing? How you doing as we kind of move towards the end? How's everything going there?
Very good. It's been really helpful today. Really settled. And yeah, and it's my parts were loving the self energy that was there. And when you asked about the parts relationship to the manager and comparing that to their relationship to that self energy that I was in through the meditation and stuff, it's totally different, totally different. So the teacher's there just to sort of keep them in check, but it's not what they really wanted. It might have brought some relative safety or something, but it just doesn't compare. It was really helpful to check the difference as you just explored after Sarah's sharing. Yeah, really helpful to see that difference between the manager doing the job and the self energy is just there. I mean, it was just present and there, and that was all that was needed. It wasn't so the effortlessness. Although I said there's effort needed to evoke that, once it's there, the effortlessness, everything just settles and kind of works. And people and all the parts' needs are met and they're soothed, and wow. It was really beautiful. Thank you to all of you. Really helpful.
Thank you. Just as we move to Dina, just as we Just to notice, how are you? How's it going? 'Cause this is a lot. This is an hour and 25 minutes. It's a lot that a whole lot we've explored. How are you? Just notice the parts and notice what the parts are rising in. What's the space here? Is the beingness? Is it held? Is it connectedness? Peace. Dina, how's it going there as we move towards closure?
Yeah, quite good. Almost a little bit tired. I'm so
Me
feeling very
too.
relaxed. I just got up, I mean, but yeah. And yeah, I also found it helpful. And because I'm feeling like it was possible for me to go further with it, I might sit with it a little bit more after our call. That's where I'm at.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Wonderful.
I just check in with my manager a little bit more.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dina. And I love what Susan points out for us, that there can be like environments that are kind of conducive, that support, that evoke more and more awareness of this self, this beingness, this causeless okayness, or experiences. I mean, why do people do meditation focusing on the breath, right? Why do we do all of that? And then I'm gonna ask you, even with all of those helpful ways that we all use, and I celebrate, does this beingness ever leave? Does it go anywhere? Or is it always here? What you're looking for, what your parts are looking for. Something have to be done to find that. Or is ultimately what you're looking for, what your parts are looking for, here? And maybe just notice if there's a clarity that, or even conceptually, philosophically, yes, I know it's here, but practically, like, come on, be real, right? And it's like that, but just see. And you might have some parts that are like, they know it's here and they can even feel it or get it, and others that are just like, are you out of your mind? Just the sense that what you're longing for, what your parts are longing for, are we ever finding it anywhere but here? Such a treat. Co-creating, the four of us co-creating today. And just as we close, just in noticing where we went today, and noticing how much of it was inspired by you just being honest and authentic and sharing what was here.
I love
Have a
that you.
wonderful, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I love that you were saying that because it felt so fitting and so yeah, the deep dive felt so like seamless. So thank you.
Yeah, you started the deep dive. It came
Yes.
right from your
Yes.
words. We just kept continuing. We dove into where Dina was pointing us.